Welcome to a conversation with Precision Ag Institute partners with Paul Schrimpf, Executive Editor, Precision Ag Professional. Here's Paul.
So, Joel, we're here at the InfoAg Conference, and what's been kind of the big takeaway or takeaways for you so far?
I think InfoAg has really continued the growth of this mathematical era of agriculture, where the decisions and the differences in complexity that farmers are experiencing. As complexity increases, most of what's going on in the farm is still a math problem. And as we look at the mechanical era, the chemical era, the biotech era, this mathematical era seems to be hitting orchards, row crops, and all facets of agriculture, right down to vertical farming, indoor farming, all at the same time.
Well, what's really holding things back? I mean, we had a lot of. When you look at the lineup of companies that are here, there's a lot of data companies. There's a lot of data companies that are serving as sponsors, and we're seeing, maybe some solutions, but also some additional players coming into the market as well. I mean, how do you think that's going to get sorted out, or how is it going to move forward?
Well, I think that's a really interesting transition that companies will have to make from just being the purveyors of the data and being able to help people bring the data to one spot. That's one segment. But then there's this segment where companies will need to participate in the outcomes somehow. And participating in the outcomes of, we spray the herbicide, we use technology to assess where it needs to be sprayed, what herbicide needs to be sprayed. But really what the farmer wants is weed control. And so I see companies trying to position themselves closer to the outcome-based solutions. But sometimes the market is still just trying to sell the chemistry that kills the weed. But using technology on top of that has to extract some value too.
So what is Winfield trying to do to get to that solution as opposed to just presenting a lot of potential tools?
Well, I think one of the challenges on one side of it is to not overspend for the solution. Sometimes there's an opportunity to make a really expensive solve. So I'll give you the example of, you could spend billions of dollars trying to model out what a particular disease in corn might happen. And if you go out there and charge the farmer $20 to model their disease, and the fungicide costs $20, well, the solution is actually more expensive than the cure. And I think that's the balance as companies gain funding and spend money. They can't just spend wildly. They can't outspend the value of the solution. I think that's one of the balances. So, at Winfield United, we made our investments in season management, because what we saw happening was the yield potential, the genetics, continued to go up. Molecular assisted breeding from the major companies really accelerated yield potential, but there was all this biological interaction that had to happen. That you needed to get the nitrogen right, you needed to get the fungicide right, the population right, the soil type right, and those pieces all come together at this intersection of local agronomy. And so where we're trying to influence our ag tech platform for our owners to use with their growers is the decisions that you can make in season. For those people that are procrastinators out there, they're really going to like this approach. The longer you can wait to make a decision, the more you know about that crop's potential.
Mm-hmm. Well, how close are we to making that instant decision on a consistent basis? Because I know that, to me, there's kind of two ways to look at the ultimate way precision and manifests itself. One is use the kind of the forensics. You look at the season and then you make decisions forward. But then the other ultimate really way you want to be is to be able to make decisions right there and then.
Yeah. So how close are we to being able to make that? I think what's interesting right now is not all of the signals to make that decision are balled up in the same technology. So pick on nitrogen. It's an easy one. You can use a crop model. You can use a rain gauge. You can use your opinion. You can use a tissue sample and a nitrate sample. And maybe on the day that you need to decide on nitrogen, you're only able to access 3 of the 5 decision tools you could use. Well, 3 is better than 1, right? And if the rain gauge is all you have and you got a lot of it, maybe there's an opportunity that you need to add some more nitrogen. But I think that's one of the things that we're learning about, the growers who are listening, who have decided that they want to apply nitrogen, not just in the fall, not just in the spring, but in season. It's that first base rate of nitrogen that you're putting out there, that's pretty much a guarantee. Like, you should do that. But that last 40 pounds, that last 20 pounds, whatever it is in your region, that's where the big ROI comes from on this. That maybe we just applied the 60 pounds and you don't really need a Precision Ag tool because the cost of applying was cheaper and easier than just making a last minute decision. But it's when we're delaying that decision, and in particular with our crop model field forecasting tool, taking a tissue sample to measure where that plant is at, and then deciding whether or not there's a return on investment. We know a lot more about yield midway through the season than we ever did in January. And I always joke around, everybody's a good farmer in Excel spreadsheet in January. We know a lot more about the last 40 pounds of nitrogen we have to put down at this time of year.
So how much of this do growers, in your experience, actually care about at the end of the day? When you talk about the 4 or 5 different factors you can go into when you go into nitrogen, are growers interested in this, or are they just really interested in an answer, or is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, I presented at answer plots for a number of years, and I remember talking to my regional agronomist, and I said, I talked to these 5 farmers today about nitrogen, and we had a great conversation, went really in depth. We talked the whole hour about nitrogen management. And I thought I had it nailed, and the next year the grower came back and asked me about nitrogen again. And the growers absolutely care. They either care because they're profitability based or they're agronomy based, but they care for the reason that they're trying to do the right thing for the environment. They're trying to do the right thing for how much it costs them to produce a crop. And they want, some of them just want you to get to the solution. Some of them want to participate in the solution. So the adoption is still all over the board. And then do they have the capability? Do they have the equipment and the time to implement what that outcome is?
And I suppose it's contingent on Winfield representatives in the field to really make that determination as to the attitude of the farmer.
Absolutely. I can run a computer program from our office, but all agronomy is local, and it's that last mile of the agronomist being in there is really important. This summer I had a chance to do some international travel to Uganda on fall armyworm. And you can make all the assumptions you want about how farmers should address fall armyworm. We hosted a technology competition to help remediate that. And until you get over there and you see how the farmers interact locally, you really can't try to apply a digital solution. It's not a catch-all. But what was interesting, going abroad to East Africa was, we talk about this mathematical era of agriculture. They may be a country that has a lot of opportunity and a lot of upside, but the technologies that they were using there are just as good as the technologies here at InfoAg, or just as good as the Silicon Valley companies, from social media to artificial intelligence to machine learning, text messaging to aerial imagery, satellite imagery. That mathematical era is going to hit the globe all at the same time. Not everybody has a tractor, but everybody has a smartphone over there, or a smartphone or a cell phone that they can communicate and receive information. So, as you look at adoption levels, the reason people adopt is still how they interact in the local community and where they get the information from.
For more information about the Precision Ag Institute, visit precisionag.com/institute.